past couple of days, Michael Cohen has been a fixture in Washington, D.C., shuttling between the House and the Senate while giving Congress an up-close look at his decade working at the top of the Trump empire. And today, that all comes to an end after Cohen finishes testifying before the House Intelligence Committee. And while he may be behind closed doors today, Cohen is clearly still top of mind for his former boss, who took a moment to weigh in on this whole spectacle from thousands of miles away at his summit in Vietnam with Kim Jong-un.
He lied a lot, but it was very interesting because he didn't lie about one thing. He said no collusion with the Russian hoax. And I said, I wonder why he didn't just lie about that too, like he did about everything else. I mean, he lied about so many different things, and I was actually impressed that he didn't say, well, I think there was collusion for this reason or that. He didn't say that. He said no collusion. And I was, a little impressed by that.
Democratic Congressman John Sarbanes is a member of the House Oversight Committee. He questioned Michael Cohen yesterday. Congressman Sarbanes, welcome. Good to have you on.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So from all that you heard during that testimony, what do you consider an indisputable crime?
Well, there was a couple of things, obviously, that we touched on in the committee hearing. There clearly seems to be evidence that the president knew about these emails being released ahead of time, so I think that's an area of inquiry that needs to be pursued. There's clearly some concern about how the testimony that Michael Cohen put together before his appearance before the Intelligence Committee when he lied to Congress, how that came together, who knew about it at the White House, and obviously these hush payments to Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels, where he brought documentary evidence. I think what Michael Cohen did yesterday, and I thought his testimony was pretty compelling, just because I can't at this point think of any reason why he would lie, what he has to gain at this point by lying, is that he just put more information on the table. And we now have the oversight machinery working in the House of Representatives, which was not the case a few months ago before Democrats got the gavel. So we're in a position to follow up on some of his testimony and do further inquiry and investigation. And as Congressman Cummings, the chairman, said, get to the truth.
So I jotted down potential indisputable crimes on the email dump that it sounds like the president was aware of, the testimony in which he lied, and the conversations he may have had ahead of time on that, and then the hush money. But what I didn't hear you mention is the inflating or deflating of his money. And so in your view, if that is corroborated, should President Trump be prosecuted for bank fraud?
Well, those potential instances or issues of fraud are other ones that we're going to look at. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, because I want to say again, it's only just now, because we have the oversight capacity and authority in the Congress to really do this job well, that we can get moving on these various lines of inquiry. Sure. So we need to do this in a very deliberate and steady way, so that wherever it takes us, we have confidence that we've arrived in the right place in terms of what the remedy should be.
Listening to Michael Cohen yesterday as well, he dropped a lot of names. And so my question to you is, who specifically do you think should be summoned to your committee now to testify?
Again, I don't want to prejudge that. The committee is going to pull together all of the information from yesterday. And actually, they're going to compare that to evidence that's already been collected from other witnesses, other documents, other subpoenas, and other kinds of things out there. And they'll judge who are the best people to bring in to corroborate something, to potentially contradict it, etc. So this was really a first step in this oversight responsibility that we have, an important first step, and an important witness to bring forward, because he obviously has a lot of knowledge about how the Trump operation functions, what Trump world looks like, etc. So he gave the committee, I think, some important information that we can now build on going forward.
Great. Congressman John Sarbanes, thank you so much for weighing in here. And just in case there was any doubt inside that hearing room and really elsewhere about what Donald Trump knew and when, Michael Cohen did his best to eliminate them.
And nothing at the Trump Organization was ever done unless it was run through President Donald Trump, correct?
That's 100% certain.
Sarah Coyne and Barrett Berger were both former federal prosecutors in New York. And so, ladies, good to have both of you on. Let's get to it. So obviously Cohen was talking a lot about the Trump businesses. CNN has learned multiple Hill committees will be splitting up the various crimes that Cohen alleged. I mentioned with the congressman, this notion of inflating or deflating the income, and could that constitute tax or bank fraud? Where is he most exposed?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. To me, what was most compelling and interesting is the inflation and deflation of the same asset depending on who the audience is. And that typically leads to a filing of a false submission, an application, or something that can't be cross-examined. And I would expect prosecutors to be trying to find those inconsistencies among his records and his public filings going forward.
Same question to you.
Yeah, I think she's exactly right. And I think Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez really laid out a nice roadmap yesterday.
Whoever is helping, and she too, I'm sure, but I mean, the way she maps it out is perfect.
Yes, it was so nice for prosecutors to actually hear sort of like concise questioning.
Yeah.
She really laid out this roadmap of, not only what type of documents they would want to get, but other witnesses that they should bring in. And I think that's really where the concern is here for, the president and people in his orbit. It's not necessarily what Michael Cohen said, but these other people that are going to be called in to testify.
That's why I was just asking the congressman.
Yep.
I understand he doesn't want to get ahead of himself, but there were a number of names mentioned, right, including even the president's own son having signed one of those checks paying back the hush money, according to Michael Cohen.
And, when you have corporate executives that commit fraud, it's often very hard to pin it on the top executive because they're insulated and they have other people below them and they can say, I didn't know what he was doing.
Totally.
When you have a family-owned, privately held, close corporation with a small inner circle, I think you can expect there will be a lot of pressure on that inner circle.
Yeah. This morning, the chairman of the Oversight Committee said his panel will look into Trump's role in the hush money payments, but obviously Trump is president, so how would he even be prosecuted? What would that, play it forward, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think we could say with some degree of confidence now that it's not likely that the president is going to be indicted for these crimes. I think the DOJ policy, well, it's not written in the Constitution. I think that has stood the test of time for a while now, and we can, safe to say that he won't be indicted. However, Congress does have the authority, if they feel like they have enough evidence that the president committed some kind of, high crime or misdemeanor, to move forward with some sort of impeachment proceedings. I don't know that we're there yet, but I think Cohen's testimony was sort of, one data point in that analysis, sort of one little building block as they're trying to, put together a case to see if they actually have the goods.
Yeah. Alan Weisselberg, a name we heard over and over, who has partial immunity, right? CFO of Trump Org. He has immunity with regard to Cohen and SDNY and the hush money stuff, but Cohen told investigators Weisselberg was involved in discussions on how to pay the hush money. So this is what Chairman Elijah Cummings said after the hearing yesterday.
Mr. Chairman, talk to Alan Weisselberg, Donald Trump Jr. in order to investigate the hush money payments. Weisselberg, Donald Trump Jr. Will you need to talk to them?
We probably will. There are certain areas we've got to be careful with because special counsel, Southern District of New York, and others have basically said that there are things that they are looking into. There are a number of areas that we couldn't even get into and didn't get into that they're looking into. This is, I think that there are still a number of shoes to drop.
So on the number of shoes to drop, right, and so many people obviously have been making such a huge deal, rightfully so, about Mueller and potential collusion and et cetera, but really isn't this about finances, SDNY?
It's about New York.
It's about New York.
Absolutely. And maybe Trump can't be prosecuted, but the organization, the Trump organization, can be. And it derives its liability for any crimes from the people who act within it. So that's well within the prospects, I think, for the Southern District or the Attorney General of New York.
Quickly, are you surprised? And I know Alan Weisselberg, presumably maybe he's giving them all they need and they don't need to raid Trump, or does it surprise you that they haven't done that?
I mean, my guess is that they've gotten a lot of documents, in some sort of a cooperative way.
Yeah.
They've probably subpoenaed a lot of things. I mean, just because there haven't been sort of, FBI raids at the crack of dawn
doesn't mean they're not getting
exactly.
a lot.
I think there's been a lot of behind the scenes.
Barrett and Sarah, thank you ladies
Thank
very
you.
much.
Nice to see you.
Much more to discuss, including Michael Cohen's claim that he fears President Trump would never allow a peaceful transition of power if he loses in 2020. But first, no deal in North Korea. President Trump walks away from Kim Jong-un without signing any agreements. And moments ago, North Korea laid out new terms that would bring them back to the table. You're watching CNN. Sometimes you have to walk. That's the word from President Trump leaving Vietnam earlier than expected and without reaching a deal with Kim Jong-un. President Trump and the North Korean leader had a scheduled signing ceremony for earlier today, but the president was advised to walk away when Kim demanded the removal of all sanctions leveled against Pyongyang.
Basically, they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entirety, and we couldn't do that. They were willing to denuke a large portion of the areas that we wanted, but we couldn't give up all of the sanctions for that. You always have to be prepared to walk. I could have signed an agreement today, and then you people would have said, oh, what a terrible deal, what a terrible thing he did. No, you have to be prepared to walk.
North Korea's foreign minister just held this rare news conference claiming Kim only wanted partial lifting of sanctions. CNN political analyst Josh Rogin is a columnist over at the Washington Post. And so, Josh, all right, so that's how North Korea is seeing it now. But, a lot of people are calling this a loss or a failure for the U.S. But Speaker Pelosi actually says she's glad Trump walked away. How do you see it? Sigh of relief that no crazy concessions were made?
The way I see it, this collapse of the Trump-Kim summit in Hanoi was a clear win for Kim Jong-un and a clear failure for the Trump administration's diplomatic effort. I mean, set aside for 1 second the fact that the U.S. and North Korea can't even agree on what they disagreed on, right? They don't even have a story that matches about what just happened. The bottom line is that no matter what the North Koreans wanted from us, the only thing they were willing to give us was the destruction of this one facility, Yongbyon. It's like an old, decaying facility that they're probably going to have to get rid of anyway.
Not to mention their entire nuclear arsenal that they still have, right?
Right. So, from all the reporting, it seems they weren't willing to put anything on the table that showed their real sincerity for denuclearization. And, of course, Trump had to walk away. He's right. It would have been a very terrible deal, but it's not as if, a failure of the summit of this kind is just a wash. It's not a draw, because time is on North Korea's side, and what they get is an extension of this process. And meanwhile, while we try to figure out what to do next, they're going to keep increasing their nuclear and missile capabilities. They're going to keep wiggling out of sanctions. And Kim Jong-un gets to parade around the world with his new international legitimacy. You might even suspect that's exactly what he wanted. A failure of the summit is good for them and bad for us.
Yeah. What about also the fact that we've been reporting that President Trump's advisors, warned him that a deal was unlikely, and even former diplomat in North Korea, Joseph Yoon, says that this speaks to a lack of preparation. Do you agree?
Right. It wasn't for a lack of trying. I mean, the Trump officials, including Special Envoy Steve Biegun, spent weeks trying to get the North Koreans to show a little bit more leg, to do a little bit more. And then the idea was that Trump and Kim were going to get into this room and bridge the gaps based on Trump's personal charisma and his deal-making ability. Well, how did that work out, right? I mean, we're told constantly by the Trump administration that this North Korea policy has failed. We got to try a new approach, top-down, based on personal relationships. Okay, now we've tried that twice. All right, it's not working. Okay, it's time to sort of recognize that and maybe change our approach a little bit. If North Korea is not going to denuclearize, there are other things we can do. It's not a choice between war and this negotiation, as some say. There's another path, which is to increase the pressure to contain them and to deter them with our allies. And the longer we wait to do that, the harder it's going to be.
So what's next?
Well, Secretary of State Pompeo assures everyone that progress is still being made. Of course, he won't tell anybody what he's talking about. And, they can continue to make progress on sending the New York Philharmonic to Pyongyang or whatever it is that they're working on. But without progress on actual denuclearization, none of that really means anything. So the Trump administration doesn't seem like they're out of effort yet. They're going to keep going. They're going to keep trying to make this grand bargain with Kim Jong-un that he doesn't seem interested in, right? He doesn't seem to buy into the fact that he can get a McDonald's in Pyongyang if he just gives up all his stuff. So we're going to have to wait longer for this to probably fail, and then we're going to have to move to a different policy, and hopefully that policy will be better coordinated than the one we're seeing right now.
I have one more question for you. This just came in as we've been talking, that the North Korean vice foreign minister just referred to Kim Jong-un negotiating with Trump. Here's the quote: "I have felt that he may have lost the will to negotiate." He being presumably President Trump. "I felt that he may have lost the will to," Kim Jong-un lost the will to negotiate.
Right. I mean, they're playing to Trump's, investment in this process. For President Trump, there's a political benefit to this, right? He wants to run on being a peacemaker. He's invested in this. He's in a love affair with Kim Jong-un. And what they're doing is they're threatening to walk away, because that's good leverage, right? And what's President Trump doing? He's not threatening to walk away. That's bad leverage. He's promising to stay at the table. So it's just another example of the North Koreans playing us for fools, okay, and us just going along with it. And, that's smart of them, but bad for us and bad for our security and for the region.
Yeah, Josh Rogan, you are excellent on this. Thank you so much. Good to have you on. Coming up next, an apology from Virginia's governor's office. Virginia state employee and outraged mother claims the state's first lady, Pamela Northam, handed out cotton to her daughter and other African-American children on a governor's mansion tour, and asking them to imagine being slaves, being handed cotton in the field. All this comes as her husband, embattled Governor Ralph Northam, refuses to resign over that whole scandal involving blackface. Virginia's first lady has responded, and let me say what her side of this is. "I have provided the same educational tour to executive mansion visitors over the last few months and used a variety of artifacts and agricultural crops with the intention of illustrating a painful period of Virginia history. I regret that I have upset anyone." The governor's office insists that cotton was distributed to everyone, not just the black children in the group, but to everyone. And the First Lady's office says it has offered to apologize to the mother of the page, this 8th grader, but hasn't heard back. Philip Thompson serves on Virginia's NAACP Executive Committee. And Philip, we've talked about Governor Northam, and now we're talking about the First Lady here. And first things first, it's my understanding you know this outraged mom who's making this claim. Have you spoken with her? Tell me what you know.
No, I haven't spoken with her, but I've known her. I know her. We've met with her on several occasions dealing with issues involving equity in the Virginia school system. So it's interesting. She's a very well-educated person, and if she has a concern with this, then that must be saying something.
There are, as we pointed out, there are multiple versions of this story, right? And first of all, have you even been on one of these governor's mansion slave cottage tours? Has this cotton handing out bit been done before? Can you shed some light on that?
I guess it has been, from what they say, but what's interesting is that, why would you use cotton when everyone know the big product in Virginia was tobacco? So it's just kind of, you would think, they're so tone deaf that they don't seem to get that at this particular point they're being watched very closely, and to continue in this direction, I mean, this was a layup, and if you can miss this layup here, what are you going to do when it comes to real policies affecting African Americans?
So you and I have talked about Governor Northam, and it was just, a couple of weeks ago, that crazy news conference when his wife actually had the sense to stop her own husband from what appeared to be moonwalking, right, when he was talking about dressing in blackface as Michael Jackson. This was in February. Let's just remind everyone.
Are you still able to moonwalk?
Inappropriate circumstances. My wife says inappropriate circumstances.
All right, so she said that was inappropriate. Again, her office, the governor's office, insists the First Lady did not single out the black kids, and one other parent in the group confirmed that to the Washington Post. So would handing out cotton to every child in the group make it any better?
No, it doesn't make sense to even be going in that direction when you can't get basic facts on whether the first African Americans that arrived were slaves or indentured servants. It seems like it would be something you would stay away from, and this is why we still believe that the Governor Northam should resign. If we can't solve the issue, you can't get it right at the governor's mansion, how can we solve issues in other places, like in my county, where we had the runaway slave game at school? It makes it real difficult for us to address these issues when the people at the top are continually doing this. And this is not the first incident that his wife was involved in either. They both dressed up as antebellum persons during Halloween, and he played his favorite slave-holding governor during Halloween, and she had on her assorted dress too, for which the NAACP did chastise them on. But it just shows a level of tone deafness that makes us wonder why why is this guy still the governor of the state of Virginia?
Philip Thompson, appreciate your perspective. Thank you. Coming up next, the top Republicans in Michael Cohen's public hearing have now asked the Department of Justice to investigate Trump's former lawyer for perjury. We'll discuss the partisan divide over the explosive testimony with former Ohio Governor John Kasich. Breaking news now, a resolution on Venezuela proposed by the U.S. that calls for presidential elections and deliveries of aid has failed at the United Nations. It was vetoed by Russia and China at this emergency session that's underway right now. The Russian ambassador in the room criticizing the U.S., accusing the Trump administration for seeking regime change as the country is embroiled in a power crisis. So that's happening more as we get that. Meantime, Michael Cohen's lawyer is firing back after two Republican congressmen say that Cohen, the president's longtime personal attorney, committed perjury when he testified before the House Oversight Committee. Trump allies, Congressman Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows, have referred Cohen to the Department of Justice for possible criminal prosecution. They say Cohen wasn't truthful on several points, including Cohen saying he never desired to work in the Trump White House. Cohen's attorney says the move is, quote, a sad misuse of the criminal justice system with the aura of pure partisanship. Here is Congressman Jordan today talking about that hearing.
This is step one in the Democrats' crazy efforts to impeach the President of the United States. And the best they could come up with is a guy who is going to prison in 2 months for lying to Congress.
CNN senior political commentator John Kasich is the former Republican governor of Ohio and former Republican presidential candidate. Governor, a pleasure.
Yeah,
to have you on.
Brooke, before we get into the Cohen thing, think about this. Russia vetoes a resolution at the UN. People are starving in Venezuela.
Yeah.
This is one place where the administration has it right, trying to put pressure on. We have a huge coalition of people that want to change the government in Venezuela to set the people free, and the Russians veto it at the UN.
Thank you for that. Thank you for jumping in on that. I wanted to start with you just on Michael Cohen and just looking at, members of your party yesterday did a lot of, liar, liar, pants on fire, but not a lot of...
what do you really know? Digging in to find out what's true and what's not.
Why not?
Everything is so partisan now that I think that if you're a Republican sitting up there, you're afraid to ask the question because then you become kind of a skunk at the Republican Party.
Even if you're on the side of seeking the truth?
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. It's such a different time. When I was in the Congress and we did investigations in defense, where we saw the Marines blown up in Lebanon, we had to have tough questions. This is not like, well, I'm a Republican, therefore I can't ask the administration tough questions. But this is where we've come. Some people there probably really believe that Cohen, has no credibility, that the Democrats should never have called that hearing. But at the same time, if you're on that committee, I think you want to acquit yourself by saying, let's get to some of the facts here. But they didn't do it. But, this is where we live today, and it's really amazing.
You can't listen to just Michael Cohen, right? It's this whole big picture collective. And if some of what Cohen said is corroborated by other key players here, do you think this warrants action against a sitting president?
Well, here's what we are learning today is that, and I think Cohen said this yesterday, that there are investigations going on the basis of some of the things that he said. So I don't know how many investigations you're going to have. You got the Southern District, and of course we're all waiting for Mueller to see what he brings forward.
And if and when it is corroborated, does that warrant actions against a sitting president?
Let's see what we have. In other words, I'm not really great into speculation. People wanted me to speculate about the Korean summit last night. I said, wait a minute, I need to see it. I need to know.
Sure.
And now, look, if you want to be really good on TV, you do a lot of speculating. But I'm not a speculator. I want to do a good job, and we'll see what we have. You know what I hope?
What?
I hope that there's not all these threads that fit together. But if they do, this is terrible problems for the president and terrible problems for our country.
The other question is something else that stands out that actually hasn't gotten a lot of attention is Cohen's remark
One other thing. What is amazing to me is the resilience of Republicans and their ability to put their heads in the sand in regard to Donald Trump and his activities. Now,
and if and when something eventually
you know what,
happens, they can't do that.
Well, I don't know what they're going to do, because a lot of times I talk to these Republicans and say, what's going on? Well, my 401k's better, or, you know, we're richer, and he's been a good president and all that. And in the meantime, think about how much this country has been hurt. Attacks on the basic institutions in this country, the FBI, the press. But I got to tell you, Brooke, these are kind of nuances for a lot of people. We follow it all the time, but a lot of people don't follow this, and they're like, my life is okay, I'm working, I have money, and it's just people wanting to pick on him, and that's where a lot of Republicans live. The question is, with the Cohen testimony, how many Republicans that have been kind of sitting on the fence finally say, after that, I've had enough? That's what we're going to have to see in these polls and the politics of this.
Stay with me. I have more from you. I want to ask about the statement from the president. You mentioned, speculating or not, last night on this summit in North Korea. He says he believes Kim Jong-un when he says he didn't know that Otto Warmbier was tortured. The Warmbiers from your home state of
crazy.
Ohio. Hang on, Governor. It is not the first time President Trump has taken the word of a dictator. Heads back home to Washington from his second summit with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. I can't help but think of the family of Otto Warmbier, an American college student who was captured and imprisoned in North Korea for more than a year. And when he was returned home to his parents, he had severe brain damage. He was in a coma and died days later. And Warmbier's parents were guests of the president at his 2018 State of the Union address.
You are powerful witnesses to a menace that threatens our world, and your strength truly inspires us all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Tonight we pledge to honor Otto's memory with total American resolve. We need only look at the depraved character of the North Korean regime to understand the nature of the nuclear threat it could pose to America and to our allies.
But when the president came face to face with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam, he gave him a pass, even defending him.
He felt badly about it. I did speak to him. He felt very badly. But he knew the case very well, but he knew it later. And, you know, you got a lot of people, a big country, a lot of people. And in those prisons and those camps, you have a lot of people. And some really bad things happened to Otto. Some really, really bad things.
Why are you
But he tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word.
So he takes Kim Jong-un at his word. He sides with Vladimir Putin about Russian involvement in the 2016 election. He believes the Saudi Crown Prince about the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And I was honored to speak with the Warmbier parents just months after his death, and they unequivocally hold one man responsible.
Using the term coma for Otto's condition is completely unfair. Otto had severe brain damage. Otto was systematically tortured and intentionally injured by Kim and his regime. And this was no accident.
How has it been explained to you what North Korea did? When you say torture, what did they do? Do you know?
Well, no. North Korea doesn't even acknowledge that. They considered it a humanitarian gesture, sending Otto home. His teeth looked like they had been rearranged with a pair of pliers. You can only look at the evidence. A perfectly healthy young American visiting there, an innocent young American, comes home with severe brain damage. But it's not like it happened and they shipped him home immediately. It's a year later. These people are terrorists. Kim and his regime intentionally injured Otto.
Nobody should go there, ever. Nobody needs to go there. It was legal. He went with the tour group. Nobody needs to go there. You know, the Wall Street Journal just went there. They show you what they want you to see. So why are we playing into this?